making their way up front here, while they're getting set up, I'll just say, of course, the primary reason that these folks come down here is to help with the Veterans Transportation Program, but they also foolishly at one time decided to be friends with me, and so then I ask them to do stuff like this, and then they do. So they come a long ways, and they aren't getting paid, and anyway, maybe I shouldn't have let that slip out just now. We'll talk about it later. But no, give them a hand, because they come a long ways, and they're very good musicians, and we really appreciate them sharing their talents with us for a good cause. And now we're going to have the Clearwater Guild of the Quilters come out here, and they're going to present some Quilts of Valor to our veterans. So.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. Good evening, veterans, friends, family, or maybe you're just a music lover and follow the organizer of this event, Tim Johnson, and his Snowman Band, or Due North. Or one of my favorites, you came to hear Mary Lou sing, Elijah, and the mellow voice of Don Fredenberg sing the beloved ballads. And Don is only 96. Whatever brought you here tonight, we gather to show our support for veterans and remember the debt we owe them for their support and service to our country, for our freedoms we enjoy today. We are very fortunate to have a very active and knowledgeable Veteran Service Officer, Logan LeClaire, that works for all veterans, making sure that they get the benefits deserved. I'm Gladys Lucan, a lifelong resident of Clearwater County, and I am here with fellow members of the Headwaters Quilt Guild, Linda Gobrinson, raise your hand, Bonnie Underdahl, Linda McPherson, and Louise Walker. As a guild, an individual, we belong to the Quilts of Valor Foundation, whose mission is to cover service members and veterans touched by war with comforting and healing quilts of valor. As a representative of the Quilts of Valor Foundation, it is my responsibility to inform others about the Quilts of Valor and to encourage groups and individuals throughout to join us in making quilts or donate so we can honor, comfort, and thank all military persons. Our goal will not be complete until we award a Quilt of Valor to all that served or have served. The Quilts of Valor Foundation began in 2003 with a dream, literally a dream. Founder, Catherine Roberts' son, was deployed in Iraq. And according to Catherine, she had a dream that was as vivid as real life. She says, I saw a young man sitting on the side of his bed in the middle of the night, hunched over. The permeating feeling was one of utter despair. I could see his war demons clustered around, dragging him down into an emotional gutter. Then, as if viewing a movie, I saw him in the next scene, wrapped in a quilt. His whole demeanor changed from one of despair to one of hope and well-being. The quilt had made the dramatic change. The message of her dream was, quilts equal healing. The model appeared simple: have a volunteer team, and that is where our guild comes in, who would donate their time and materials to make a quilt. Each quilt is formed by loving hands that joins bits of fabric together, one piece at a time. A quilt of valor may be fashioned by only one or two individuals, or may come about through what our guild calls a sewing day. As we quilt, we talk about our families and friends and how grateful we are to those who will be receiving what we call our quilty hug, when we award and wrap them in a quilt of valor. Quilts of valor are a way of saying thank you for your service, sacrifice, and valor in serving our nation in combat or in peacetime. The first quilt was awarded in November 2003 at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, interestingly, to a young soldier from Minnesota who had lost his leg in Iraq. Remember, it started with one quilt. As of January 31st, there have been 403,609 quilts reported as being awarded to veterans around the country. Our Headwaters Quilt Guild is nearing 500 of awarded quilts. And most of those quilts are awarded at Veterans Day programs, like we did here in Bagley in November. It was interesting that we had an active military person, along with his 100-year-old great-grandfather from World War II, each receive a quilt. Any active service member or living veteran who served in the Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, Merchant Marines, or the Space Force are eligible to receive a Quilt of Valor. We welcome people to submit names to us for a possible Quilt of Valor award. And you may have noticed a display in the Commons area as you came in, or take notice on your way out, that has a book of previous recipients awarded Quilts of Valor and nomination forms to be used in submitting names. Tonight we are honored to recognize 4 veterans that all belong to the Melvin Johnson American Legion Post 256 in Clearbrook. Our first veteran tonight is Ken Breen, a lifelong resident of Clearwater County, graduated the class in 1968 from the Clearbrook High School. An interesting fact is that he was drafted in 1970 with the reinstated lottery system, December 1st, 1969. That determined the order of call for 1970. The system hadn't been used since 1942. Curious, I looked it up what that meant. Each day of the year, all 366 days, can't forget those leap year babies, were put in a bucket and drawn out one at a time. A list of eligible draftees was made by their birthday to be assigned a lottery number as it was drawn. It happened that Ken's birthday or lottery number was 19, so all eligible draftees aged 18 to 26 with that birthday were then eligible to be drafted. Then the next birthday was drawn and drafted and so on. He reported for his basic training at Fort Lewis, Washington. His MOS, or military occupational specialty, was for light wheel mechanic, with training being completed at Fort Ord, California, with Company 63B. Ken's next duty station was that he was deployed to Vietnam for 15 months. He served at various sites, one being at the 27th Evacuation Hospital, part of which was helping to unload wounded military personnel. He would rather have been working on equipment, but he was called to duty and was proud to serve his country where need be. He was discharged in 1971 with the rank of Specialist E4, having earned a Vietnam Service Medal, 2 overseas bars, and Marksman Medal. Upon returning from the military, he married his high school sweetheart, Lori. They've been married for 53 years and have 3 children and 2 grandsons. Where you see Ken or Lori volunteering, you see the other. A few of the volunteer opportunities are anything involving the church, cleaning cemeteries, a very active member and past president of Lake Itasca Region Farmers, and the Clearwater Historical Society. They were both recently recognized as outstanding Clearwater citizens. Ken has been a member of the Melvin Johnson American Legion Post 256 for 50 years. For the past several years, he has been the membership chair. He proudly carries the flag with the color and honor teams. Ken's MOS training helped him in his career as a 20-year equipment operator, and later he was the area business representative for Local 49 Heavy Equipment, retiring after 10 years in that position. When visiting the Labor Hall at the Minnesota State Fair, you will find a paver stone honoring him as a heavy equipment operator. In relation to his military service, you will find his paver stone at the Clearbrook Veterans Memorial. Kenneth Green, veteran of the United States Army, please come forward to be awarded your Quilt of Valor by Linda Gobrinson of the Headwaters Quilt Guild. Kenneth Green, Specialist E4, the Quilts of Valor Foundation wishes to recognize you for your service to our nation. We consider it our privilege to do so. Though we may never know the extent of your sacrifice to protect and defend the United States of America, particularly during the Vietnam War, we award you the Quilt of Valor as an expression of gratitude from a grateful nation.
All right. All right. The next recipient of the Quilt of Valor Award is Robert Granley. Robert, or better known as Bob Granley, has been a lifelong resident of Clearbrook. He was part of the graduating class of 1957 from Clearbrook High School. When it was time to enter the military, and it seemed he would be drafted soon, he and Lloyd Engen decided to join the Army under the buddy system to have that support from home. It meant an additional year of service, but worth it to be with his friend. After doing their basic training in Fort Ord, California in 1959, they didn't see each other until after they were discharged and back in Clearwater County. So much for the buddy system. But they soon picked up where they left off and are buddies to this day. Bob was trained as military police at Fort Gordon, Georgia, and spent 6 months at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He was then sent to Germany with the 4th Armored Division. He was the first in his family to serve in the military. It was a very special experience to him, and he is proud to have served his country and was honorably discharged in 1962 with the rank of Spec E4. After returning from his service duty, he accepted another duty, that of a husband, when he married his wife Sandra. Together they had 2 children. You probably know them best as owners and operators of Granley Grocery. In 1965, Bob joined the Melvin Johnson American Legion Post 256, where he has served as a commander and regularly attends the meeting, doing what he can. If you have eaten at any of the many meals of lutefisk, meatballs, torsk, and other items served by the American Legion, you have had a taste of his cooking, as he was the lead man in the kitchen. In addition to being a member of the Legion, he served for 40 years on the Clearbrook Fire Department and the Clearbrook City Council until they moved out of the city limits. You will find a paver stone at the Clearbrook Veteran Memorial Site recognizing him for his service. Robert Granley, United States Army veteran, please come forward to accept your Quilt of Valor from a member of the Headwaters Quilt Guild. Robert Granley, Spec E4, the Quilts of Valor Foundation wishes to recognize you for your service to our nation. This quilt is an expression of gratitude meant to thank and comfort you. We honor you for leaving all you held dear to serve, whether it was in time of crisis or in time of peace. This Quilt of Valor says thank you for your service, your sacrifice, and valor in serving our nation. Our next recipient is Lloyd Engen. Lloyd Engen, lifelong resident of Clearwater County, enlisted in the United States Army under the buddy system with Robert Granley. Strangely, they were never stationed together after basic training. Lloyd did his basic training in Fort Ord, California, starting in 1959, and completed his further training at the U.S. Army base in Aberdeen, Maryland, known as Aberdeen Proving Ground. He was trained as a supply inventory specialist. When 14 men were being sent to their next duty station, he was the only high school graduate and the only one that knew how to type, so he received an office job and the others were out in the elements. This duty station was at Fort Richardson, Alaska, where he needed secret clearance to do his job of inventorying big equipment such as tanks. He was discharged from this base as a Spec 4 in 1962. Lloyd returned to Clearbrook and worked for Lakehead Pipeline, now known as Enbridge, for 30 years before retiring. He was blessed to find love with Phyllis Peckstrand, and they were married in 1973, and Lloyd became an instant father to 7 wonderful children and is proud to call him Dad and Grandpa. Lloyd has been a member of the Melvin Johnson American Legion Post 256 for 62 years. Over these many years, he has held numerous positions, one being commander, and the most intense, that of an adjutant who is responsible for keeping membership records, minutes of meetings, and overall administrative duties. He has attended many events as a member of the Color Guard and paid tribute to veterans upon their death in the Honor Guard. You will find his paver stone both at the Clearbrook Veteran Memorial and at the Clearwater County Memorial Site in Bagley. Lloyd has been an important person in the life of Clearbrook Senior Center, serving several terms as its president. He has stepped back a little and is now a member of the board of directors. He was a member of the Volunteer Fire Department and census taker for the United States Census Bureau. Lloyd Engen, veteran of the United States Army, please come forward to be awarded your Quilt of Valor by a member of the Headwaters Quilt Guild. Specialist E4 Lloyd Engen, the Quilts of Valor Foundation wishes to recognize you for your service to our nation. This quilt is an expression of gratitude meant to thank and comfort you. We honor you for leaving all you held dear to serve, whether in time of crisis or in time of peace. This Quilt of Valor says thank you for your service, sacrifice, and valor in serving our nation. The next recipient is Larry Jernis. Clearbrook resident Larry Jernis is a 1968 graduate of Clearbrook High School and was drafted into the United States Army in March 1970. He completed his basic training at Fort Lewis, Washington, and remained there for his infantry training. After completing his training, he was deployed with the 3rd Battalion, 12th Infantry, 4th Infantry Division to the Central Highlands of Vietnam. In the later part of his time in the country, he was reassigned to a security force under the USARV command. Larry was discharged with the rank of Spec 4 with award medals being the Bronze Star, Combat Infantry Badge, Vietnam Campaign Medal, Vietnam Service Medal, and the Army Commendation Medal, to name a few. A total of 14 months was served with the Army in Vietnam. His family was always patriotic, and he had an uncle, Wallace Leroy Johnson, who lost his life in Italy during World War II and is buried at Fort Snelling. One of his two sons had a Navy nuclear career and now retired from the Navy, and he works in Bremerton, Washington for the Defense Department. Larry was married to Karen while in the military, and after he was discharged, he and his wife bought land in northern Clearwater County. Later, he used his GI Bill to attend ag school while farming and working at the Clearbrook School. He later attended technical college and graduated with an electronics degree and moved to Montana and worked in the communications field, retiring in 2011. He and his wife retired back to the area of their roots. His employment gave him a good background to carry with him as he serves on the board of directors for Garden Valley Technology. Larry has been a member of the Melvin Johnson American Legion Post 256 for 14 years. He currently is a sergeant at arms and proudly serves on the Color and Honor Guard. He has a paver stone in the Clearbrook Veteran Memorial Site. Larry Jernus, United States Army veteran, please stand and come forward to be awarded your Quilt of Valor by a member of the Headwaters Quilt Guild. Spec 4, Larry Jernus, the Quilts of Valor Foundation wishes to recognize you for your service to our nation. We consider it our privilege to do so. Though we may never know the extent of your sacrifice to protect and defend the United States of America, particularly in the Vietnam War, we award you this Quilt of Valor as an expression of our gratitude from a grateful nation.
We again want to thank all 4 of our veterans from Clearbrook receiving the Quilt of Valor tonight. And again, remember, there's nomination forms out in the foyer area to nominate the next recipients. Enjoy the program.